Alright, welcome back to 60 Hotshot Adventures. Let's see, are we in somewhat focused? Yeah, it looks like it. Alright, anyway. 05 Pontiac Vibe. Did a video about the oil change. Doing brakes on it. They are worn out. So, 21 millimeter. Get the lug nuts off however you want. 4-way impact. And then I usually, I've done enough of these. I always have a CV axle nut. Stick it on here. Screw it on. Keeps the rotor from getting all up in your way, shifting, moving around. This makes it a lot easier when you're trying to get all this off here. And while we're working on all this, got my Ryobi fan there, 7-incher. Got a 4 amp hour battery pack on it. It's kind of warm today. Sun's out. Got it set 3-speed. Got it set on 2. Got it set on 2. It had it with me a while back over the last couple weekends. Used it at a fair I went to. Works good. It'll probably last 8 or 10 hours sitting over there on a 2 on a 4 amp hour battery. Anyway, caliper. Just using a 14 millimeter on an old 3/8 Bauer. Try and get that off. Wiggle this off. I have the little hooks, but we'll just sit that there for right now. And see if we can't bring you in here. You can tell my pads aren't wearing very evenly, so, and because of that, well, when we get the rotor off on the back, there's a groove kind of going on it. And usually when they're wearing uneven, usually means they're not sliding very well in the brackets. These actually are moving pretty good, or these are seized up. These are moving actually pretty good as well. Little sticky, but not too bad. But I'm gonna get this off. This is a 17 millimeter for this bolt here, and there's one just south of it right there. So we're gonna get those off. Anyway, all right. So we got the bolts out. I had a problem a few years back. Don't know why. Bolt came out of my caliper bracket. It was I was out of town, and so this basically flopped like this. Pretty much came off. Well, I was getting off the highway, you know, not the greatest experience, but thankfully there was a hardware store nearby, and went and bought another bolt right at the hardware store. Just took the bolt that was left, compared it. I don't know what the thread is, but got another bolt, made it to the right size, and got back on the road. Anyways, so this is off, and then we got the caliper bracket, caliper here. See if we can't get you in here a little bit. So also, what I tend to do is I'll come in here with a small screwdriver or pick, whichever you have, and I'll pry back this seal. This is your piston seal, and I'll take a look inside. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to. I'll take a look in there and just see if there's wetness, like if there's any wetness going on in here. That means the O-ring. This is nothing but a housing and basically a round piece of steel of some sort with an O-ring on it, or two. That's it. There's nothing else to it. It's cast iron, piece of steel with an O-ring, and your fluid pushes in there, and when you let off the brake, it releases by a couple thousandths. And when that O-ring goes bad, there'll be there'll be some brake fluid in here, and then that basically corrodes everything, and then that's why your caliper generally seizes up. And then you have all sorts of problems. So anyway, so I checked that, and mine was dry, so it means the calipers are still generally fine. You know, this is piston side, a little thin there. Throw it on there. Use a big old C-clamp. I'll put the back here against the bolt. Try and line it up. Get it semi-centered. And just slowly turn it. Don't have to go ape. Just little by little, you're pressing all that brake fluid all back through the line, back to the reservoir. This is another way to know if your caliper is good or bad. You should be able to just slowly work it back in. There should be there should be some resistance, but it should be nice and smooth. Just goes right back home. Go all the way back. That's it. But yeah, but if you do that and you notice you're really getting into it to try and press that piston back, you're probably on your last brake change for that caliper, if not sooner. So that's done. That's good to go. Nothing wrong here. So now we'll take off my CV axle nut and washer and pop off the rotor. And then can't really probably see good on video, but there's a nice ridge going on both sides of this, and it is what it is. Rotors are cheap these days. So what you do is you go on a website like I do called rockauto.com, and you can go buy a brake kit for the whole front end. 2 rotors and a set of pads shipped to your door for less than $100. Depending on which brand you buy, I mean, if you buy like a nickel plated, ceramic coated, or drilled and slotted, or high performance rotor, that obviously changes the price, and then it becomes way more than $100. I've got over 350,000 miles on this car. I'm not trying to spend bank. So, just get a standard semi-metallic set of pads. Comes with the hardware. Make sure, you know, when you're buying them, make sure it says comes with hardware. Comes with the you get the rotor. And then, so what we're going to do next here is I'm going to take this caliper bracket and we're going to go to the garage. Okay, we're at the garage here. Video for another day. I won't get into that with this video, but bolts from the valve cover of my 6.0. Anyway, okay, we're somewhat in focus. Pop off your little stainless steel brackets. Toss them into my little metal bin down there. Stick it here on my vise. And then make sure these are okay. So I'll just pop the little boots off and I'll slide them out. A little bit of old crud on there. We'll wipe that off when we get back to the car. I got a little rag over there, wipe it off. Then I got some new grease for that. They both move okay. They're not sticking. But the thing that most people miss is when they do a brake job is these parts here, where those brackets sit. I happen to have a square file. Without dropping it. You can use anything. I've even used angle grinder. Depending on how bad this is, if you can use, I've used angle grinder and just get in here and get this rust out. I mean, we're not trying to take off a whole bunch of metal here. Just trying to get it. Just trying to clean it up. Get any rust out of there. It doesn't got to be, you know, super shiny or anything special here. But what happens is if you don't do anything about this when you go to put your other clips on there, one, the clips probably won't go on very well. And two, that rust, it's called rust jacking. At least that's what I call it. And what happens is that rust gets in and it builds up. And then the little brackets get tighter because of the rust squeezing on them. And then your brake pads in here get pinched because of the rust jacking. And then they no longer slide properly. And then they stick. And then, well, you're doing brakes sooner. So just get in here. Don't gotta get too exceptionally crazy. Just trying to make sure there's no excessive rust. I mean, you're gonna have a little bit of rust scale. That's normal. I mean, come on. I mean, think about where your brakes are. Driving through a rainstorm, and that's it there. So now we'll go back to the car. Alright, now we're back at the car here. So, got some of this Ceramic Extreme by Permatex brake parts lubricant. So we'll go here, and I think we're in frame maybe. Kind of, sort of. Pull the brake pin out. Take a rag. You can buy these in packs of like 50 or 100 at Harbor Freight for cheap. Wipe all the old goop off. This is just an old like acid brush kind of. You can get these also in packs of like 50 or 100 at Harbor Freight for cheap. So I'll just use this. Put it on there. Doesn't have to be too excessive. I know I probably have a little too much on here. I'll throw a little around the top edge where the boot seals. And we'll just make sure it's free. Stick it back in there. Slide your boot back on. Make sure it moves pretty free. That side's done. Repeat on the other pin. Because this grease will just gets like old. And it gets sticky, and it doesn't, I mean, you figure, how hot are your brakes? So I get in there, wipe it off, clean them up. If you want to get crazy, you can take your caliper bracket and you can stick it in a bead blaster, sand blaster, and you can polish them up and throw some nice brake caliper paint on there from the parts store, you know, whatever color you choose, and you can really make a whole project out of this if you really want. But we're just trying to do some basic maintenance. Get the boot back on there, make sure everything moves freely. That's done. Alright, so let's move on to get the brake parts out of the box here. Nice shiny brake rotor. Set that off to the side. Typical child-proof boxes. Then they have them in the bags. Fun times, right? Let's see if we can't slide you down a little bit further here. Anyway, rip open the bag. Can't really get you at a good enough angle here. At least not that I can figure out. It's not too bad. Alright. Brake parts cleaner. Pretty expensive stuff, you know, per can. I usually go into the parts store and I buy it by the case. Which is like, I think it's like 10 or 15 cans or 12 cans. I don't remember quite, but buy a whole case usually when I buy it. So there's like a packing oil on them. Get that off. Don't want that on there. I know the whole joke is using brake parts cleaner, you know, at the shop versus at your private shop, you know, it's like, sparingly using it. That's why I buy it by the case. I don't have to be so stingy about it. Use it for everything. And things it wasn't intended for. It's great bug killer, by the way. If you ain't got bug killer and you want to kill a bug, brake cleaner. Works every time. So we'll go ahead and get that back on there. Use my CV axle nut. Get that all set on there the way it should be. Like that. Now, it keeps everything where it needs to be. You're not wrestling with it falling off on you 100 times. If you don't have a CV axle nut that, well, then you just gotta thread your nut on there a whole lot more. Versus this way here, I only gotta put it on like 3 or 4 turns. Saves me time. Anyways. So, now we're gonna get this guy here. Get my new brake pads out. There's those clips. Nice and shiny. Stick them on there. Make sure they go where they belong. And before I do that, getting ahead of myself, take some of this brake parts lube. Don't need to go overkill on it here. Throw it right here. Right here where the clips go. Every little bit helps. We're here in the Rust Belt. My other favorite channel, Erico, South Main Auto. Giving him a shout out. Super cool guy. Extremely knowledgeable. He does lots of these videos. And this is all the stuff he does, so. Go ahead and throw the clips on there. There we go. Alright. Make sure we're putting the brake pads, make sure we're putting these in the right way. If not, oh well, take them back out, stick them back in, you know. When you do it, they should slide pretty easy in here. You shouldn't be forcing them. They should move pretty freely. Shouldn't have to grind the ears. I did that once years ago when I was stupid and I didn't know any better. I was first starting out learning how to do this like a lot of years ago. I was like grinding the ears because I didn't know about rust jacking and filing down the groove, get the rust out of there. So I was basically like grinding down the ears so they would actually fit and slide in there properly. Now years later, I've learned how to do it right. Now we can, with the bolt holding the brake, now we can easily sit this on here. Make sure we got the orientation right, you know, with everything's going the right direction. And then we can just stick the bolts back in. There are times I have used some anti-seize on these, but that time is not today. So, I'm not gonna have you guys bore you guys with watching me put that on here for a minute. We got those bolts in there. We got them tightened up. I don't know the torque spec. I just put them on there. Just kind of get under them. It's probably around 80 to 120 foot-pounds. I've seen specs for caliper bolts. I just put them on there. I just tighten them up. Probably, I don't know, probably around 100 foot-pounds right now as it is. Anyway, brake caliper. Already compressed the brake piston. Stick it on here. Make sure the flat of your pin lines up with the tab. Stick your caliper bolt in there. Then you can always pivot it like this if you want. That's why you always do the top first. Slide it down. Line up the bottom. Stick your bolt in. If you want, you can put anti-seize on these, but Ryobi, 14mm Ryobi Power. No idea what the torque spec is. Been doing it this way for a while now. Just grabbing a 3/8 and just sticking it on there. I mean, this thing doesn't, I mean, it's a Bauer. It doesn't actually have, you know, I mean, we're not talking like Milwaukee quality torque here, so. That's on there. Moves good. You got the key in the ignition with it kind of like on accessory. So that's why this moves and it doesn't, you know, column doesn't lock on me. That's it. Basically now rinse and repeat. Do that exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to throw the tires on. Probably about 100, 120 foot-pounds is usually what I torque them to. 100, yeah, I'll go probably 110. 120 might be a bit much. But if you wanted to go one step further, before you put the rotor on, if you have it, is on the hub flange behind the rotor here. Spritz it with some PB Blaster Surface Shield, I believe is what it's called now. Or I have fluid film, or I'll shoot it with fluid film. Light coating, put this on there. So now in, you know, another, however long the brakes last at this point, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, whatever it ends up being, this rotor will come right off. You won't be turning it, getting back there with a sledgehammer, wailing on it to try and get it free. Because it's all rust jacked here on the inner hub or on the face, it'll just fall right off. Comes right off every time. So I've been using, that's how I've been doing it with a lot of cars. I've already done it on this car so many times, there's still a coating of fluid film back there. So that's why I didn't do it. So, thank you guys for joining in on this long video on doing brakes. So I know this video is about 20 minutes. Fortunately, the job is actually probably more like a 15-minute aside or less job, but when you're making a video and explaining every step and trying to record it, you definitely add quite a bit of time to the job. But thanks y'all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. And P.S. one more thing. After you're done, do not forget to pump up your brakes. Give them a good, I don't know, 3 to 5 pushes until it feels like you got a brake pedal. Because if you don't, you are going to be changing your shorts, because the first press you will have no brakes because you just compressed piston all the way in and it is not yet pressing on the pads and rotors. So do not forget that step. Otherwise you will be quickly reminded when you first press the brakes and you have no brakes. Catch you later.